Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Thursday morning by Andrew Erickson and Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, we are here into the semifinals of the fantasy playoffs. Erickson, how you doing, buddy?
I got 3 teams left. Christmas is coming up. Best time of year. What more could you ask for?
Christmas coming up. If anybody can tell watching on YouTube, I am traveling. That's why I have kind of a different setup than usual. Thank you to my friends here in North Carolina who are hosting me and letting me do this show here from their foyer.
Staying with Bill Belichick? Is that it?
We actually are very near Chapel Bill, and I wonder if he's going to walk by.
Dude, if you see him, you should say something to him. Unlike what I did when I saw him in the elevator last year at Gillette Stadium.
Panicked.
Yeah, and I panicked. I can't imagine what it's going to be like for those college students having conversations with him.
Yeah,
I was afraid to talk to him. So,
and you are not a potential professional football player, as we've seen from your route running. Fitz, what about you? How are you doing? What would you say to Bill Belichick if you walked by him?
Oh, man, I would say it's unfortunate you're not going to get to coach Omarion Hampton, one of the running backs I'm excited about in next year's class. I think he's going to be my RB2 in Dynasty rookie drafts. But, we're putting the cart before the horse. We got semifinals week, and I'm talking about 2025 Dynasty rookie drafts.
I was going to say, Fitz is already promoting our Dynasty show, him, me, and Bogman coming back in January. We've been doing the stages throughout the season, but we'll be back with our regular show in just a couple of weeks. I mean, as soon as the season ends, like you said, we kind of jump into it. But to your point, the regular season is not over yet. We still have titles to win. We will jump into our Thursday show. Quick reminder for everybody. I've been reminding you all season, but just in case you hadn't heard it before, all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Hopefully, those are more important than ever because you are still alive in plenty of your fantasy playoff leagues. We will start where we always do, guys, with our waiver wire ads of the week and asking whether or not we are going to start or sit these guys in week 16. A couple of names here, a few wide receivers and a running back. We'll start with wide receivers. Jalen McMillan, I have on this list. Fitz, where did you kind of rank him in your waiver wire ads for the week? And is he somebody you're considering starting in week 16?
So I think we had him as the top wide receiver waiver ad, but that wasn't saying a lot because it wasn't a terrific class. I've got him wide receiver 41 this week. So I think he's playable in deeper leagues where you have to start 3 wide receivers. Matchup with the Cowboys isn't all that bad. I don't think he's a super safe play, even though he's got 134 yards and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, wide receiver 10 in half-point PPR scoring over that stretch. I mean, he's been more involved in the offense lately, but how confident are we that he is going to get more than 5 targets in any given week, especially when the Bucs are motivated to play catch-up with Mike Evans and get him to 1,000 yards? So, I just don't know if we're going to see like a high target count for McMillan when he's sharing with Evans, Sterling Shepard, and those running backs.
Yeah, Fitz, I was actually going to bring up the Mike Evans angle, so I'm glad you did. I'm curious how much you think, because like if this team was not at all competing for a playoff spot, then my approach to betting on Mike Evans, my approach to ranking Mike Evans, my approach to everything with him would be like, you can't go high enough. Like they're all they would care about is getting him that 1,000-yard streak extended. They're first in the division, so theoretically, like obviously that's going to be secondary to trying to win the game. Do you think that will play into their game plan and how much volume he actually gets, in these next few weeks?
I think those lines are blurred just because getting Mike Evans the ball is good policy regardless. And especially in this offense with no more Chris Godwin, and Kate Otten has sort of fallen off the map a little bit. So, I think he's pretty much dialed in for like 12 plus targets every week now.
What do you think about Jalen McMillan, Erickson?
I think that he's a pretty good wide receiver 3 flex play. I have him wide receiver 38 in my rankings, and I'm looking at game environment, right? Looking at Tampa Bay versus Dallas, playing inside a dome. Baker Mayfield's a top 5 quarterback in ECR. I want pieces attached to this Buccaneers offense. Again, if you're looking for, hey, which one of my fringy wide receiver 3 flex plays can pop this week? Well, Jalen McMillan has shown a pretty high ceiling over the last couple of weeks. He has touchdown equity. So even if, Mike Evans is seeing the majority of targets, well, McMillan is winning with efficiency. And that's not a bad thing to bet on. Again, we knew that these Washington Husky receivers coming in, we knew one of them was going to be underrated. Clearly, it's not Jalen Polk. Rome Odunze, we think is good, but he's never going to get enough volume. McMillan has now popped. And I think we would have seen this sooner with him had it not been for that injury that he suffered right after the Chris Godwin and Mike Evans injuries. We were all really high on McMillan. He's going to step up, going to take over the slot role. And it got delayed. But now that he's finally healthy, taking over this number 2 receiver. I mean, Kate Otten has been phased out. Like, he's not involved in this offense nearly as much. So I think McMillan has really stepped up as that number 2 receiver. And with all the attention on Mike Evans, even if it's only 5 or 6 targets, he's going to get favorable looks against Dallas's defense. So I think that he's an inspiring wide receiver flex play. And if I need a boom in my lineup, I mean, Baker Mayfield against the Cowboys on the road, I think he's got a ceiling.
The other receiver I wanted to bring up is Rashod Bateman, obviously coming off of a 2-touchdown day. Bateman has been pretty good for the Ravens when healthy this season. He hasn't always been healthy, and I put together this outline before we got news that he popped up on the injury report with a foot issue. It's just always one thing or another with him. Currently, our Are They Playing tool on FantasyPros.com gives him a 72% chance to play. Worth noting that they play on Saturday, so he does have one fewer day of rest to recover from whatever the foot issue is. So just keep an eye on that, and bear that in mind as we have this discussion. But assuming he does play, coming off of this 2-touchdown game, only 3 catches, but he's just been a more reliable receiver than he had been in the past for the Ravens, and he does have 4 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. Fitz, is Bateman somebody that you're interested in starting in week 16?
Boy, you would have to be in like a 14-team league where you have to flex like 3 guys, I think. It's just, we know Lamar doesn't have a very good track record against the Steelers. He's averaged something like 156 passing yards against them in 7 career games. And, Mike Tomlin's been around for all those games, so there is a continuing thread. I do think games from like 3 years ago are relevant in that career track record. So, Bateman has only had more than 5 targets in 2 games this year. That's the issue. He's been scoring a lot of touchdowns, 7 this season, 3 in the last 3 games. But I think it's kind of touchdown or bust for Bateman this week.
Yeah, Erickson, Bateman has been the deep threat for this offense. You might think of just in looking at stylistically, it might cross your mind that Zay Flowers looks like the guy who would be the deep threat. It's been Bateman this year. And again, when healthy, that's been effective, if not a high volume play. Yeah, I saw, to your point, Fitz, about Lamar. Prior to the Eagles game where they finished at 19 points, and by the way, would have been over 20 points if Justin Tucker didn't miss 3 kicks in that game. But prior to that Eagles game, I think it was the last 3 games that Lamar has been held to under 20 points were all against the Steelers. Like this is the team that he struggles against. We had a show earlier this week with Erickson and Welsh and myself, and Welsh is kind of buying in on a big game, breaking the Steelers curse for Lamar this week. I'm really not. Like it's one of those things where I need to see it happen before I will believe it. I was looking at his career record, not even looking at offensive stats. Half of his regular season losses in his career are either to the Chiefs, Steelers, or Browns. Literally every other team accounts for 50% of his regular season losses in his career in the NFL. Those 3 teams account for the other 50%. So the Steelers are just one of those teams for him. Erickson, what do you make of Bateman this week?
I want no part of Rashod. Not if he's on the injury report. That is a screaming red sign. Do not go near Rashod Bateman. Again, this has always been his issue since he entered the NFL. Right, when he's been healthy, been really efficient. But when he's banged up, he does not play well. Again, the last time he played the Steelers, 2 catches for 30 yards. Right, so even if Lamar gets there for fantasy purposes, that doesn't necessarily mean Bateman's going to get there because we know Lamar can do it with other weapons. They have Zay Flowers, they have Likely, they have Andrews. Okay, what if those guys catch the touchdowns? Derrick Henry. And then you also have Lamar's legs, right? So he can get there on his legs too. So I don't think that you necessarily need Bateman to hit for Lamar to hit. It makes it a little bit easier. And I think last week, the Giants are one of the worst teams against the deep ball. And Rashod Bateman exposed that. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense is much better. So I think this is not the week to chase Bateman. I know last week was great. I don't think it's going to be a repeat performance.
Last waiver guy here, Kendre Miller, looking at the running backs, somebody who at various points in his time as a prospect or his time, going to his rookie season, I know you guys have been interested in obviously getting some more opportunity here, a degree of uncertainty with Alvin Kamara. Now that Dennis Allen is gone because he hates Kendre Miller for some reason, he's getting some kind of opportunity here. Erickson, I'll start with you on this one. Kendre Miller, is he somebody, he's ranked higher than these 2 wide receivers were that we talked about. He's inside the top 30 in ECR at running back. Is he somebody that you are willing to start this week?
Yeah, I think that he's an RB3 play. I love Kendre Miller, so that's why it's really hard for me to not want to rank him higher, but I don't love the spot for him playing on a primetime game on the road in Green Bay as 14-point underdogs. Like that's not an ideal spot for really any running back with a rookie quarterback making a start, right? So I think there's a bit of a ceiling cap there, but at the end of the day, I know Kendre Miller is a really talented guy. I know that he's an explosive rusher, so I know that Kamara's rushing yards have been down, but part of that has to do with Kamara as not as effective as a rusher as he's been in years past, but also part of the offensive environment. There's a reason why Kamara's never hit his over on his rushing prop in games that Spencer Rattler has started this year. Like, it's not all just on Kamara. It's because the overall offense is cratering with a rookie quarterback. And I mean, Green Bay's been pretty good against running backs recently. They're playing at home. So I think there's a good floor here. I am concerned a little bit about how many targets he gets. Again, if this is assuming Kamara doesn't play, he only has 2 targets over the last 2 weeks. Maybe he takes on that entire Kamara role, which would be ideal for a floor performance from Kendre Miller. But, I would assume that they're probably going to get Jamal Williams a little bit more involved, maybe in pass protection, maybe out of the backfield, and he's still on the roster. Again, Kamara seems like he's probably not going to play, considering they just signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire to the practice squad, so they don't usually make transactional moves. The only reason we don't have news about this game, given Kamara, is because he plays on Monday night. So the injury report we don't get until Thursday for the Saints, and I'm assuming we're going to get a DNP from Kamara. So I think that he is an RB3 flex play, probably more of a floor than a ceiling, just given the environment that he has to overcome to really smash.
Fitz, he's RB27 in ECR. Is that too high, too low, or just right for this
Just
week?
right. I think that's exactly where I have him. And Erickson pretty much covered everything well, and I want to thank Erickson for giving a little hat tip to the Packers' run defense. I still hear people say the Packers are like this great matchup for running backs. No, that was the Joe Barry era of defense for the Packers. Like Jeff Hafley, the new defensive coordinator, this unit's been pretty good against the run. Not great, not elite, but at least league average, maybe even a little better than that. So not a great matchup. And, Erickson mentioned Jamal Williams too. Revenge game. Jamal did spend the first 3 years of his career in Green Bay. Maybe that does get him a little more run, although I think Kendre Miller outsnapped him like 26-6 last week. So there is a chance at volume for Kendre Miller, but only if Spencer Rattler can pick up a few first downs, and that is seriously in question this week. So maybe there's 15 to 18 touch upside for Kendre Miller, but it could also be like 10 to 12, and they lose, 38-3.
Did you guys see the upheaval about how Lions fans want Jamal Williams to get cut from the Saints so he can join Detroit? They can bring him back in the Dave Montgomery role.
Yeah. That would be imagine if that happened and he was like all of a sudden a fantasy winner again because he just gets 6 touchdowns in the next 3 weeks.
Oh, man.
Hilarious. It is the most wonderful time of the year for getting in on all the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. A couple of games I'm keeping an eye on this week come on Saturday with that doubleheader. Texans, they were laying 2.5 points early against Kansas City. Then that flipped when it looked like Patrick Mahomes more likely to play. So just stay up to date on that, but it's certainly trending in that direction with the Chiefs being favored. The Ravens, laying almost a touchdown at home to start things off against the Steelers. That's gone down a bit. I didn't understand that line at all. We just talked a little bit about Lamar's history against Pittsburgh. That was also just a lot of points in general for this rivalry and the history we've seen out of it. Lines and odds are subject to change, of course, on those games and every game. Here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, Fitz, who are you planting your flag on this week?
By the way, did you talk about the great thing for a sports fan this time of year, the daytime bowl games on a weekday? Nothing
Yes.
like, it's a Tuesday and it's 11 a.m. Central Time, and all of a sudden Toledo is kicking off against Florida Atlantic. What could be better than that? I'm going to plant my flag on Brenton Strange. And I know he popped up on the injury report. I don't know if he practiced or was limited or out of practice on Wednesday. Do you guys happen to know? All right, I'll keep talking. But if he plays, he had 11 catches for 73 yards on 12 targets against the Jets last week, although his longest reception went for 9 yards. But
by the way, Fitz listed as limited on Wednesday,
Limited.
87% chance to play on, or are they playing?
Yeah, so he's going to play, and he is playing that Evan Ingram security blanket role in the offense. He's just stepped right into the Ingram role, and it doesn't mean there is a lot of upside, but there is a floor of I think he's going to have 5 or 6 catches minimum. It might be 5 or 6 for 39 yards, but here's betting that I don't know. I think Brenton Strange could get into the end zone this week with all those targets. And maybe a defender falls down or something and he has a gain of longer than 9 yards and rips off a 35-yarder or something like that. So I'm planting my flag on Brenton Strange. I've got him ranked as a tight end 1 this week.
He's tight end 10 in ECR. That's moved up a lot just in the last day.
I've got him 8. I'd play him over Travis Kelce this week.
Wow. Kelsey's up at tight end 7 for the record. That's I think that is saying something here. Erickson, what do you think about that ranking for Strange is tight end 10 and him as a flag plant for Fitz?
I mean, I think that you just copy and paste whatever you would have ranked Evan Ingram here, right? Again, he's taking over the same role. I mean, I'm not trying to poo-poo Evan Ingram as a player, as a talent, but it's not like Strange entered the NFL without any draft capital. It's not like this was some undrafted player. Like this guy, I believe, is Penn State, athletic, resume, second round pick, like entering his second season, and he's someone that has shown out. And I think the thing that's interesting about Strange, or I guess not Strange, is he didn't like completely get phased out when Evan Ingram came back. Like I was really surprised where he was able to kind of like have passes, catching passes here and there, even with Evan Ingram healthy throughout the majority of the season. We obviously saw in the beginning of the year when Evan Ingram was missing time that Brenton Strange had receiver finishes as tight end 9, tight end 7, tight end 9. So yeah, I get it's Mac Jones, but if anything, Mac Jones is better for Brenton Strange because he's much less likely to push the ball downfield and just dump it off to Strange. And it's a good match. I mean, this is a game that the Jaguars could win, right? They're playing against the Raiders. So last week, maybe a little bit tougher to imagine, hey, is he going to get in the end zone? Well, this week, yeah, they should be able to score points against the Raiders in the Dome. Again, this is a classic vomit stack game in DFS where both teams are just really bad defenses, but offenses, Aiden O'Connell, Mac Jones, you could see some points here. So yeah, I like the call on Strange, especially in full PPR.
Erickson, we'll stick with you. Who's your flag plant?
Darnell Mooney coming off a donut game, but this is I love buying the dip on these boomer bust wide receivers coming off games where they absolutely do nothing. But there's been a quarterback change. So Michael Penix is coming in to start his first game in the NFL. And I think this is going to be a great upgrade for Darnell Mooney because I know that Michael Penix can push the ball downfield. And I can only imagine they're going to look at this Giants defense that, again, we alluded to it earlier. Rashod Bateman, he went off on deep passes against the New York Giants. They ranked dead last in EPA per target on the deep ball this season. The Giants cannot stop the deep pass. And that's Darnell Mooney's bread and butter. Like he's had, again, a boomer bust wide receiver, but when he's spiked, he's been a top 10 receiver in a lot of different weeks. And I think with Michael Penix coming in, I think they're going to want to showcase Penix. Hey, this is why we drafted this guy inside the top 10. This is why we picked him. We get that we got, ridicule for picking Michael Penix and, now they sack Kirk Cousins, but at home in the Dome, I think they're going to let it rip with Michael Penix and really show off what this guy can do. And I think they're going to attack downfield with the Giants' weakness. So Mooney, again, a tough click after last week, but hey, Amari Cooper had 14 targets and then put up a donut the next week. So you can never really feel safe with some of these receivers, but I think the process says, hey, great matchup, like the upgraded quarterback. The deep ball should be there. I think he's going to get an opportunity, and so I like Darnell Mooney this week.
Fitz, we've got more coming up later in the show on Darnell Mooney and really this whole Falcons offense. In some of our player debates, he's wide receiver 35 though. So quickly, do you think that's an appropriate ranking for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a smidge lower. This should be Michael Penix Jr.'s 4th NFL start rather than his first. They should have made this change a month ago, but better late than never. And the only thing that concerns me is that even for quarterbacks who turn out to be really good or even Hall of Fame level, often their NFL debuts, their first starts are not pretty. And I'm a little worried about that, but there certainly is a much better chance of Mooney connecting on like a deep ball with Michael Penix than there was on Mooney connecting with one with the washed up Kirk Cousins.
There is no time of year I love more than the holidays, and one of my favorite annual traditions when I head back east to see family and friends, as I am right now, is making the time for a trip to College Park to check out my beloved Terps basketball team. I cannot see the Terps football team because they are not playing in one of those bowl games. They were not good enough this year. Fitz, it's a great time to catch up with old friends and watch new players together. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. When you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. Plus, tickets make the perfect gift. Game Time helps with their new feature Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Some of my other favorite features include their all-in pricing. I would rather get coal in my stocking than get hit with a surprise fee at checkout, so I love seeing the total up front. I also love getting a panoramic view from my seat before I buy, so I know exactly what I'm getting or gifting with these tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's jump into some player debates here. Fellas, Erickson, starting with you on the running backs. And by the way, I wanted to kind of intentionally for this week, and I'll probably aim to do something similar for next week's show, is kind of pick some bigger names. Typically, I look a little bit more on the fringes with some of these player debates. I'm kind of approaching this with the idea of, if you are still alive in your fantasy playoffs at this point, you probably have a pretty good team. You probably have some pretty big name players that maybe got you to this point and have struggled lately, or maybe you drafted early and somehow survived if they've struggled all season, and you're wondering, is now the time to play them or not? So you might notice it skews a little bit more towards some of the bigger names this week than we have in past weeks. That's intentional, just trying to kind of make a guess as to the types of managers that are still alive at this point. If you have questions for some of the more fringe players, definitely we are still available. Go to our Discord, ask us there. Fitz and Erickson are on there all the time. Ask us on Twitter, wherever you want. We can still answer other questions, but these are skewed a little bit towards bigger names, which you guys might have noticed when I put together the outline. Let's start with the running backs, and then we'll start with Joe Mixon or Chuba Hubbard. Mixon obviously struggling lately. Hubbard coming off of a poor game. Erickson, who do you prefer here, Joe Mixon or Chuba Hubbard this week?
I thought I was going to say Joe Mixon, but then I kind of took a longer look at it, and I don't see why it should be Joe Mixon. It should be Chuba Hubbard, in my opinion, because you're looking at, okay, both guys have similar workloads. They're both workhorses in their respective backfields, but even looking at just the Vegas implied odds in terms of who is projected to score more points, the Panthers are projected to score more points than the Houston Texans are. So you can't even make the argument, oh, well, Joe Mixon's in the better offensive environment. Well, that's not really true, because they have a tougher matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. And we've seen this Cardinals defense be boomer busty against some of these running backs. I mean, Rhamondre was efficient against them last week, even though he didn't have a monster game. We obviously saw what Charbonnet did to the Arizona Cardinals 2 weeks ago, an absolute monster game. So I think Chuba Hubbard bounces back here. I mean, he's been someone that's kind of overcome tough matchups in the past. I wouldn't even really make the argument this Arizona Cardinals one, especially with them playing at home, is a super tough matchup. Joe Mixon on the road against the Chiefs. Yeah, I think it's Chuba Hubbard.
What do you think, Fitz?
Yeah, I've got Chuba inside the top 10. I mean, there's no one behind him anymore. It's Mike Boone behind him. So, very good outlook for 20 touches or so. And, the Cardinals are kind of a neutral matchup. I would consider benching Joe Mixon this week. If you have some other decent options, like maybe for Rashod White. I'm worried about Mixon's week 16 outlook. Over his last 5 games, Mixon has struggled every time he goes up against a good run defense. 25 carries for 46 yards against the Lions in week 10, although he did get into the end zone. 14 carries for 22 yards against the Titans in week 12. 12 carries for 23 yards against the Dolphins last week. The Texans have one of the worst offensive lines in the league. This week, Mixon goes up against the Chiefs, who've allowed the fewest rushing yards, receiving yards, and fantasy points to running backs this year. And Mixon's probably not 100% after that hip drop tackle that wasn't called, by the way, last week. So, his ankle is dinged up. Just not a good spot for him. I have him ranked RB17, and I'm worried that might be too high for Joe Mixon.
It's definitely below consensus, by the way. 81% chance to play with our early prediction on Are They Playing on FantasyPros.com. Consensus has him still inside as an RB1. He's RB12 on the week in ECR. Erickson, where do you have him ranked now? That sounds like maybe moving him down, looking at it more closely.
Yeah, I probably got to move him down to where Fitz has him. And yeah, this is a tough one because he's been so good all season long, but he is an older running back. He's had a lot of touches this season. He's playing banged up, and this is virtually the worst matchup you could ask for on the road. And again, this isn't us, this is a bad spot. I mean, the Texans offense might not be good here. The Texans offense has been not good for the majority of the season. And we're seeing that by, I was shocked how low their implied team. That's the average outcome is they're going to score X amount of points. It's not good this week for them. So especially with Mahomes potentially looking like he's going to play, if they're in catch-up mode against Kansas City, playing on Saturday. yeah, I feel like this might be one of his. I mean, two of his last 3 games have been total duds, where he's been RB29 and RB32 in half PPR scoring. He had 22 rushing yards against the Titans. He had 23 rushing yards against the Dolphins last week, and especially if he's banged up. Yeah, I think that you're trying to find someone other than Joe Mixon this week.
By the way, like when they released the schedule, and I remember seeing this game on a Saturday, like, ooh, I'm not going to be Christmas shopping that day. Texans, Chiefs, that's going to be a great game. I might go Christmas shopping. I think this game is, I think it's going to low key suck. I think this is going to be a bad game. Yeah.
Are you going to get your shopping done before Ravens Steelers after this?
That I'll do. I'll make it for that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. It goes to show you that you really don't know what a game is going to look like that, a few months 6 months in advance when they put the schedule together. Because this was like the doubleheader, right? The Saturday, Wednesday turnaround. It's these same 4 teams playing around robin. And, in May, that looks really exciting. And, the Texans have been disappointing. Like, obviously, the Steelers are winning a lot, but, are they the type of fun offense you want to see in prime time on Netflix? The Chiefs with Mahomes banged up. Ravens can't stop a nosebleed. I mean, it just looks different than you would have expected. And, that tends to happen every year. I'm getting a lot of questions on Joe Mixon already, like even early in the week of, in the semifinals, can I really sit this guy who's had so many big games this year? And I think the answer is yes, you can sit him. I'm not saying he's a must sit, but I think if you have a strong option, I'm totally in agreement with you guys. Like, you can look elsewhere. The other running back debate I wanted to throw you guys, it's kind of a crazy one to think, again, thinking back to where we were a few months ago, but these guys are ranked back-to-back in ECR. It's Breece Hall or Jerome Ford. Fitz, I will start with you on this one. Who are you starting in week 16, Breece Hall or Jerome Ford? And by the way, that's RB20 and RB21 in ECR.
Yeah, this is tough because I've major concerns with both. And with Ford, my concern is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I mean, yes, Ford is probably in line for 15 to 20 touches with Nick Chubb out for the season with that broken foot. But DTR has made 3 starts for the Browns. They were all last year. The Browns scored 3, 13, and 12 points in those 3 games. Browns running backs in those 3 games had 46 combined receiving yards. I don't think Ford has a very sunny touchdown outlook with DTR at quarterback. And, it could be a pretty rough day for him if DTR can't move the sticks and like keep drives going. So that said, I think I'm playing him over Breece Hall, whose health I'm concerned about. Like, he missed week 14 with a knee injury, was kind of an unexpected active in week 15, but he played his lowest snap share of the season, 48%, only 9 carries for 30 yards, did get into the end zone though. Major reservations about both guys, but I will go with the guy who I know to be healthy and who's, got a pretty good chance to finish out the game. I don't know if that's the case with Hall.
Fitz just gave us 60 seconds on why he doesn't like Jerome Ford and then still picked him over Breece Hall. What a fall from grace. Erickson, who do you like better?
I like Breece Hall because I think that he's the healthiest Jets running back right now, because he's the only one that practiced in full this week on Wednesday. The other 2 guys are both limited with back injuries. So they've been trying to put the team on their back, the Jets, and it's been weighing on them heavily. So I think we're going to get more of usual Breece's workload this week because I think that he is going to be healthier. We got really bailed out. I was rewatching the Jets game from last week, and when the touchdown he scored, the Jaguars didn't try to stop him because they wanted to get the ball back. So it was so funny seeing the offensive line just get this massive push. And it was like one of the first Breece Hall touchdowns since seemingly like week 1 where he actually got the ball at the goal line. So we got bailed out by a touchdown last week. I think he gets back to his normal role. And I mean, I like Jets Rams. Like, this should be a game where it's offensive scoring. Both teams kind of going head to head. So I like Breece Hall a little bit more than Jerome Ford. I mean, we've seen Jerome Ford in this RB1 role before. He had 1 top 20 finish in 6 games as a starter before Nick Chubb came back. So I don't know all of a sudden, now he's immediately going to be smashing. Like, I get that the matchup's good against the Bengals, but DTR has a chance to really make this entire offensive environment crumble, whereas the Jets are going to score points. It's a 3.5 point spread. I think it's going to be a little bit back and forth and I think that Breece Hall will get more touches than last week. So I'm going to go with Breece.
Erickson has given me credit throughout the season for changing his mind about start sit calls. He just changed my mind about this one. I'm gonna move Breece Hall ahead of him.
Nice.
Like, DTR could totally shipwreck this offense. He's thrown almost 150 career passes. His YPA is 3.7 yards per attempt. 3.7.
So bad.
Dude, he made a start against the Ravens last year, and it was a year ago. Maybe he's improved in some areas, but it was like this. He just didn't belong in the field. Like, I watched that game closely, and it was just I mean, it was an untenable quarterback situation. So they've been dealing with unique quarterback play, I'll say, throughout the season. The James experience and obviously Deshaun Watson. But
what happens if you're the Jerry Jeudy stakeholder, though, and you bench him this week and then like DTR struggles in the first quarter and a half and they put in Jameis and Jeudy winds up with like 5 for 100 and 2 touchdowns and you've got him on your bench? Like you would be so...
You're just going to be like, hey,
rushed.
The process was right. He's going to be bad with TTR. And then, I mean, that's kind of why, like, in some super flex leagues, like, if Jameis Winston got dropped, like, pick him up. Because we may not have seen the last of him. He might be back for week 17. So just keep.
Dude, I can just picture Erickson now, like, middle of March, thinking back on all the money he lost, getting eliminated in the semifinals. The process was right. That's what's going to keep him sleeping comfortably at night. Let's look at some wide receiver debates. We actually do have Jerry Jeudy coming up in the future. So we'll get more into if you actually would consider making that move this week in a bit. I want to talk about Drake London. I've got him, paired here against Jauan Jennings. Obviously, Jennings coming off a poor game. Fitz, when you saw the news about Michael Penix, what did you do with Drake London? Did you leave him wherever you had him already? Did you move him up a little? Did you move him up a lot? Did you consider moving him down because it's a rookie quarterback making his first start? What was your gut reaction? I see this news. I need to go move Drake London in this way.
I was going to initially move him up. I wound up not moving any of the Falcons pass catchers. So like I wasn't excited about the Atlanta pass catchers because the Falcons were clearly trying to hide Kirk Cousins on Monday night in that game against the Raiders. I think they threw on first down once the entire game. But then, like, just looking back over the NFL debuts over some of the current NFL starters, like, Joe Burrow, kind of a lousy NFL debut. Josh Allen, a lousy NFL debut. Like, even the good ones are not good in their first games. And I can't imagine the Falcons are going to cut Michael Penix loose for 40 pass attempts in his first NFL game, even though the matchup against the Giants is pretty good. So I left London where I was at, where he was at before with Cousins. I had him wide receiver 18. He's still wide receiver 18.
And where is that in relation to Jennings?
One spot behind. Like, I'm not worried about Jennings throwing up a brick last week. The 49ers passing game just wasn't working. And the rain in the first half of that game, someone, I wish I could give credit, but I forget who it was on Twitter, put up numbers from like rain games for Brock Purdy. Man, he's awful in the rain. Do not ever start Brock Purdy or his receivers in the rain ever again. So 2 of 9, 2 catches, 9 targets for Jennings last week, 31 yards. But since week 10, Jennings has averaged 8.5 targets, 5.7 catches, 66.8 receiving yards a game with 3 touchdowns in those 6 games. Those are wide receiver 2 numbers. I've got him as a mid-range wide receiver 2 this week.
Erickson, I want to frame the question to you the same way. When you saw the Penix news, we've already talked about how you like Mooney more because of it. What did you do with Drake London specifically when you saw the news? And then also, how is he ranked compared to Jennings?
Yeah, I didn't move Drake London either. I thought it was kind of neutral because, like, for London, he just needs volume, right? That's his main. And with this matchup with Penix, like, you're not saying, oh, well, now they're going to throw the ball more. Like, I like Mooney because he can win with efficiency. Like, he can win on limited volume. That's not the case with London. Like, he needs double-digit targets, which with a rookie quarterback in a really soft run matchup for the Falcons against the Giants, I don't think you're going to see double-digit targets for London. So, again, he can catch a touchdown. That's great. But I think that he kind of stays put in that mid wide receiver or wide receiver 2 range. And I like him less than Jennings. Like chemistry wise, like Brock Purdy and Jennings are just like, they're like dialed in. And the fact that he had 9 targets last week, yes, it was terrible, but we all know why. So I think that he has a major bounce back here, not afraid of the Miami Dolphins. And I mean, we know Deebo Samuel's not doing anything. So Jauan Jennings.
Jennings is 4 spots below London and ECR. So you guys are both disagreeing with consensus on that one, even if not by a ton. Another wide receiver debate here. This is a decision that I had to make last week, and I will have to make it again this week. So I decided I'm going to use this opportunity to get you guys to help me out with my decision making here. DJ Moore or Jordan Addison. Who do you like better this week? Erickson, I'll start with you.
I just don't want to play Bears players. I don't know. I know they seem to always get there because Caleb Williams drops back to throw 40 times, and it's a matchup where they should see volume. But I know the Lions defense is banged up, but I just hate this game, honestly. Bears Lions playing outside, outdoors. I think it's going to be really crappy in the cold. I just don't want parts of it. So I'm going to go with Addison because he's just been on fire. And even in a game last week where he wasn't nearly as involved, I mean, he still put up a decent floor. And I mean, they're playing the Seahawks. Geno Smith's going to play, so maybe we get a little bit pushback from the Seahawks offense. I'm more excited about that game, honestly, from an offensive environment standpoint than Lions and Bears. And maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I like shooting for the ceiling with Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore did have 16 targets when they faced the Lions in week 13. Obviously, that's a season high. He had 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown. And this defense is so banged up. To your point, you always call, Ford Field is the Coors Field of the NFL. Clearly, they won't be playing there this time around, so maybe it looks a little bit different. These guys are 2 spots apart in ECR for the record. DJ Moore and Jordan Addison. Fitz, who do you prefer?
No, they won't be playing in Ford Field. They'll be playing out in the most isolated stadium in the NFL, out on the Museum Peninsula in Chicago, which is so hard to get to. I hate going to games there because of that, or concerts. But anyway.
How do you really feel?
I have Jordan Addison ranked 1 spot ahead of DJ Moore. And even though I'm a big believer in Jordan Addison's talent, a couple weeks ago, I was having a hard time getting to where ECR was with him every week because I wasn't entirely comfortable with his target outlook. But Addison has averaged almost 9 targets over his last 5 games, with at least 8 targets in 4 of those 5 games. Since week 11, Addison is wide receiver 6. And a half-point PPR fantasy points per game. So I've got him ahead of Moore. I'm okay with Moore. He's also getting a lot of targets, 56 over his last 5 games. And like a couple, well, obviously before this last week, I would have worried more about the matchups because the Lions were pretty tough on outside cornerbacks, not so much against slot guys. But now, without their best outside cornerback, Carlton Davis, like, I'm not worried about really any wide receiver matchup against this Lions defense. And DJ Moore kind of smashed against the Lions on Thanksgiving, over 100 yards and a touchdown a few weeks ago. So, like, I'm okay with both of these guys. I've got them ranked both at the top of wide receiver 3 range.
To your point, Fitz, about the targets for Addison, do you feel like the floor has raised at all? Because my problem with starting Addison early in the year was, we knew what the ceiling could be, but the downside was he would borderline lose you the week, like getting you very, very little, basically nothing. Lately, since the start of week 9, so going back 7 games, he's only had 2 of those games where he's been outside the top 36. And, the top 36 isn't maybe that high, but it's at least high enough to be like he's not losing you the week if he's not reaching that ceiling. We obviously know what the ceiling is because 2 of the last 4 weeks he's been a top 3 wide receiver finish, right? But even going back, like I said, those 7 weeks, the floor feels like a little bit higher, even in the worst case scenario. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Paradigm shift, I think, in the way the passing game works for the Vikings, and different quarterbacks. But last year, it was TJ Hawkinson, at least before his knee injury, and Justin Jefferson were like both target hogs. Both guys were typically getting double-digit targets like every week. And now Hawkinson is no longer really a target hog. And Jefferson's probably not getting as many targets as he got last week either because, like, Addison is so good. I mean, I think it's more of a plus EV move to throw to Jordan Addison than it is to throw to TJ Hawkinson. So I can understand why that shift has taken place. So Hawkinson not as valuable, and maybe part of that is injury related, but Addison is just really good. And, Sam Darnold, God bless him. He is floating the fantasy value of 3 Minnesota pass catchers.
If you want to bet on Jordan Addison or the Vikings or anything else, we've got a special offer for you all. You can unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free. Download the Betting Pros app today. Use promo code FPFREE. Get access to tools like the Same Game Parlay tool, the Prop Bet Analyzer, and the Prize Picks Prop Bet Cheat Sheet. Don't miss out. Try it for free for 1 month now. A month that gets you into the fantasy, or not the fantasy, the NFL playoffs. So you can bet on that fun action as well, even after the fantasy season is over. It's available on iOS and Android. Again, promo code is FPFREE for Betting Pros Premium for free for 1 month. All right, let's do some more rapid fire start sit decision, guys. Erickson, are you starting Isiah Pacheco on Saturday or Tyrone Tracy Jr.?
Tyrone Tracy Jr. for me. Top 20 running back. Spent the last 2 games with Drew Lock as a starter, and I hate the matchup for Pacheco against the Texans. And I mean, Chiefs are 3-headed backfield. We're not getting rid of Kareem Hunt. We're going to use him. We're going to use P. Ryan a little bit, where Tracy still, I know Singletary got the goal line touchdown last week, but Tracy got 10 targets the last time Drew Lock started a game. So I think that Tracy is the clear bell cow still in his backfield. Not afraid of the Falcons matchup. So I like Tracy.
Fitz, who do you prefer? Tracy's RB26. Isiah Pacheco is RB28. They are sandwiching Kendre Miller in ECR.
Yeah, Erickson is not going to be changing my mind on this one. I would much rather play Pacheco. Like the Chiefs have to get the running game going this week, don't they? I mean, it would be irresponsible of them to let Patrick Mahomes throw it 40 times or more on a high ankle sprain. I know Pacheco has not looked great since coming back from that injury. And he is kind of sharing work with Kareem Hunt, but I still think he's a good bet for like 14 or 15 targets against the Texans. Not a great matchup, but Tracy had 10 carries for 31 yards last week against the Ravens. Over his last 3 games, Tracy's averaging 3.1 yards per carry. 2 of those games were against the Cowboys and Saints, 2 of the worst run defenses in the league. I would take issue with that bell cow description, Erickson. Like they're giving Singletary touches again, including a goal line touch last week. So, like, plus whether it's Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, Tim Boyle. I mean, it's just a disgusting quarterback situation, regardless of who starts for the Giants. Like, this offense is going to struggle to move the ball. I want no part of it. I would much rather. I have Tracy outside the top 30.
Outside the top 30. Okay.
Yep.
And where do you have Pacheco ranked?
25 for Pacheco, 32 for Tracy.
All right, let's look at a wide receiver. We've talked about both these guys already. One of them was a flag plant. One of them we talked about in passing. Jerry Jeudy or Darnell Mooney. Kind of an interesting one given the quarterback situation for both these guys and given what we've seen from them recently. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one. Darnell Mooney or Jerry Jeudy?
Oh, man. I've got Jeudy, wide receiver 32. And I think when I first did my rankings, I was doing them like Monday night as if Winston was going to play, and I had him at like wide receiver 12. So I have docked him like 20 spots in the rankings, and it still might not be enough. That said, I do have him a little ahead of Mooney. So like, yeah, as mentioned before, like the outlook is really bleak with DTR for Jeudy. But like, I don't know how good the outlook is for Michael Penix in his first start. And as I mentioned before, like Joe Burrow was under 200 passing yards in his first NFL start. Josh Allen under 200 yards in his first NFL start. Like, I just don't think there's going to be a lot of yardage and touchdown goodness to go around with Penix making his NFL debut. So I'm going to go with Jeudy and maybe hope that in-game benching of DTR happens and we get Jameis coming in to save the day for fantasy.
Erickson, you are planting your flag on Mooney. Does that mean that you're going with him over Jeudy this week?
Yes, because I think that the Falcons are actually trying to win games by playing the best quarterback, and the Browns are not doing that. We've seen Jerry Jeudy with bad quarterbacks, all the Denver Broncos days. Like we've seen it, and it's terrible. So the only way this beats me is if Winston comes in the second half, and if you can trust that, if that's the process you want to follow, like you believe DTR is going to get benched, then hey, more power to you. It's a
non-zero chance.
It really is a non-zero chance. So, but I'm going to go with the guy that I'm confident is going to play 4 quarters with Michael Penix and Darnell Mooney.
Dang, Erickson might be swaying me a second time on this.
Oh my God!
He can't get me on Tyrone Tracy, but 2 out of his last 3 here.
Fitz, have some conviction in your research and opinions. Come on, man. Let's do some flex ones here. 2 teammates who are facing a very good Eagles defense, Terry McLaurin or Brian Robinson. Obviously, both guys have been really strong plays, when healthy on Robinson's side of things. For most of the year, this was not a very good game against the Eagles the first time for this Commanders offense as a whole. So who do you guys prefer in this one? Fitz, starting with you, Terry McLaurin or Brian Robinson?
Yeah, tough matchups for both, but Robinson did fare a little better the last time. I think he had like 13 for 68 and a touchdown against the Eagles, and McLaurin had 2 targets, 1 catch for 10 yards. Although I would just tell people, don't bench Terry McLaurin. Like Joe Pisapia and I got a zillion questions about A.J. Brown last week in his matchup with Joey Porter Jr. from people who wanted to bench A.J. Brown. And like every single person we told, do not bench A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown had 110 yards and a touchdown. So kind of telling people the same thing, even though Quinyon Mitchell is going to be a tough matchup for Terry McLaurin. Do not bench him unless you're absolutely stacked at wide receiver. But that said, in this choice, I would flex Brian Robinson over Terry McLaurin.
And again, I'm kind of assuming that a lot of people who are still alive have good teams and will have to make tough decisions based on the matchup or, really any number of things. I mean, to me, week 16 is the week of like, if you get to week 17, it's like, okay, it's one game, anything can happen. But like, this is the like most pressure filled week, honestly, at least the way I kind of treat it internally in terms of like, I want to make the title game. Like if I have a good team and I have tough decisions to make. So I think it's worth bringing up somebody who has been obviously a must start all season in McLaurin, given what he did last time against Philly. Erickson, who do you like better in this flex matchup, Terry McLaurin or Brian Robinson?
Brian Robinson for me as well. I mean, he's got a very good role, especially without Austin Eckler. I mean, he's involved in all facets. And I think it's going to be tougher for the Eagles to say, hey, we're going to take away the entire Commanders run game between Daniels and Robinson. Whereas, I mean, they can throw everything at Terry McLaurin and make Daniels throw it to Olamide Zaccheaus, Diami Brown. Like, the Eagles that's probably what they're going to plan on doing. But again, I agree with Fitz. Like, don't bench Terry McLaurin because the dude just needs one, right, to pay off because he's that talented. I mean, we've seen it. Like in the fourth quarter, he had basically no catches or targets in one of those games, and he catches one goes to the house, right? So I think that he can end up getting there even if it's rough sledding. But I like Brian Robinson versus McLaurin.
Erickson, I'll start with you on the next one. DeAndre Swift or Cooper Kupp? And Cooper Kupp, maybe I shouldn't have included because if you have him on your team, you might not even be alive anymore, given the goose egg you put
Everybody
up.
was saying that, well, that's why you get bye weeks.
Yes, exactly.
That's why you're in your bye weeks. I think it's kind of close, but I just don't want Bears. I don't like the matchup for the Bears at home. I think it's just going to be a gross game. So I like the environment more, Jets-Rams. So I think Cooper Kupp bounces back. So I'll go with Kupp.
Where are you ranking Kupp this week? Just in a vacuum, not even thinking about Swift.
He's wide receiver 17.
17. Okay. That seems roughly fair. Fitz, what about you?
I've got Kupp, wide receiver 14. Even with the goose egg last week, since coming back from injury in week 8, he is wide receiver 16 in fantasy points per game. And he gets the Jets this week. They're not as good against slot receivers as they are against outside receivers. I don't want to play Swift. Like I know the Lions have these injuries and they just lost Aleem McNeil from the middle of the defensive line, but like Swift had 11 carries for 39 yards against the Lions on Thanksgiving. They've still have been good against the run. I guess I will say to anyone starting Swift, your hope is probably that he damages the Lions in the passing game. And we saw that last week with Ty Johnson and James Cook having big days in the passing game against the Lions. Well, actually, James Cook had one catch, but it was kind of a big one. So, yeah, I mean, like Swift might be able to pay off as a pass catcher. I don't know if he pays off as a runner. I would rather start Kupp for sure.
I will say, too, Roshan Johnson should be coming back as well. So he's missed the last couple of games, and we know that they like him as a pass catcher. So just kind of keep that in mind. That hurts Swift's floor, I think, without having that full bell cow role because they're going to use Johnson, especially at the goal line. So,
Erickson, let's go to you for Rhamondre Stevenson or Jacoby Myers this week.
Jacoby Myers. I mean, I think that he's like a locked-in top 20 guy when O'Connell is the starter. They're playing the Jaguars secondary is terrible. And Rhamondre, I get like on paper, the Bills kind of looks like, like they give up a lot of points, but if the Patriots are getting blown out, then it doesn't matter because Rhamondre's not going to be involved whatsoever. So Jacoby for me, especially if it looks like Aiden O'Connell's going to play. So Myers for me.
These guys are back-to-back in our flex ECR rankings. They are 53rd and 54th. Overall, Myers is wide receiver 26 and Rhamondre is running back 25. Fitz, who do you prefer?
Jacoby. He's inside my top 20 at wide receiver. He and AOC have clicked so far. And I would start him over Rhamondre in standard scoring, actually. Since Rhamondre missed week 6 with a foot injury, since coming back, he has averaged 48 rushing yards over 8 games and just 3.3 yards per carry. And he has not had more than 74 rushing yards in any game. Like, it just has not been very exciting for Rhamondre. I would play Jacoby Myers without question.
Fitz, I'll stick with you. Last flex one here. Najee Harris or Marvin Harrison Jr.? Who would you play?
This is gross. I thought we were in the playoffs here, Worm. What's with this question? I guess I'm playing Harrison, and I'm not enthusiastic about either option, but I don't hate Harrison's matchup against the Panthers. I do hate Najee's matchup against the Ravens. And Najee was outsnapped by Jalen Warren 23-14 last week. And I'm worried this could be another Jalen Warren week because, as you well know, Worm, the Ravens are really tough against the run, but not so tough against running backs in the passing game. Yes, Najee catches passes too, but Jaylen Warren is the much more explosive pass catching back. And with George Pickens out, like they need some sort of home run hitter, some speed in that offense. And I think Warren is the guy who can give it to them more so than Najee.
Erickson, this is an interesting one in ECR because if you just look at the rankings, they're only a few spots apart. But if you look at, if you can kind of compare two players through expert consensus rankings on our site, and it shows you the percentage of experts that have a guy higher than the other, 95% of experts have Marvin Harrison Jr. higher, even though it's not by a very wide margin in the overall rankings. Are you among that 95%? Do you agree with Marvin Harrison Jr. as the play here?
Yes, I am part of the herd. I am part of the 95%. So give me Marv, Panthers. He's going to definitely score the 3 touchdowns I want Trey McBride to score. So be it. Marvin Harrison for me.
All right, I got a quarterback one here. Interesting one here. Fitz, Sam Darnold or Jordan Love this week?
Oh, you're making the Packer fans say you're making me pick the Vikings quarterback. Yeah, I have to. I actually think it's an easy call. Love is how many passes is Jordan Love going to throw on Sunday night, excuse me. Wait, is it Monday night or Sunday night? Monday night, yeah.
Monday, right?
Against a Saints team that's much better against the pass than they are against the run on defense. And Jordan Love has not thrown 30 passes in a game since week 9. He has averaged 23 pass attempts over his last 5 games. The Packers just passed the Pittsburgh Steelers to become the second run heaviest team in the league behind only the Eagles. Green Bay's run the ball in 51.2% of their offensive snaps this season. So, man, like, even though 20 passes against the Saints might get you 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, like, I'm not going to take the chance on the low volume. I'll just start Darnold here. I've got him QB6.
Wow. Erickson, Fitz says this one is easy for him. These guys are back-to-back in ECR. Sam Darnold is QB8. Jordan Love is QB9. How do you see it?
I think it's a little bit closer because you could just see, like, what if they decide, hey, like, let's get the passing game going. Let's have Jordan Love cook here and like build some momentum heading into the postseason. I mean, their implied team total is the second highest among all teams. Like, they're going to steamroll the New Orleans Saints. It's a matter of like how they do it. But Fitz points out the important things that matter. Like, it should be through the run game. Like, it should be Josh Jacobs, like getting 3 touchdowns. Like, that's what should happen. So I think the safe play is probably to go with Sam Darnold because I think you can expect a little bit more back and forth action. But I think from a ceiling perspective, like, what if the touchdowns go through the air? I mean, would anyone be surprised if Jordan Love, yes, he doesn't throw a lot, but he throws for 4 touchdowns? I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. Whereas the Seahawks defense, I mean, they've looked really good. They've played a lot better, even though most of those games have been against the Cardinals. So I think Darnold's like the floor play, but I think if you're like a massive underdog this week and you buy into the fact that, hey, maybe they do try to dial up the pass game more, he wins with efficiency, I think Jordan Love could have a like top 5 performance against just a really bad overall Saints defense.
For our tight end decision, I actually have 3 names in here because they're all kind of clumped together in ECR, and I found it really difficult to kind of parse through all of them, so I just wanted to kind of throw an extra name in here. Fitz, Dalton Kincaid, Cade Otton, or Kyle Pitts. How are you ranking those 3 this week?
Oh, man. All right, so I've got... I might be willing to let Erickson talk me into one more, but right now I've got Otton highest at tight end 13, Kincaid tight end 17, Pitts tight end 18. Like, as much as I like Michael Penix Jr., I don't know if he's good enough to resurrect Kyle Pitts. So let's just leave him out of this. Like, Kincaid came back from injury last week and had his highest yardage output of the season. It was 53 yards. Great. There's not been enough cooking with Dalton Kincaid in that passing game this season. And like, early in the season, Kincaid couldn't get it going. That was before the Bills traded for Amari Cooper. That was before Keon Coleman was showing a pulse. I just don't know if there are enough targets to really make Kincaid worth starting over Otton, who at least had his moments earlier in the season. I know the production's tapered off, but I'd still play Otton here.
What do you think, Erickson? Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, or Cade Otton?
Pitts is last because Michael Penix is not a miracle worker, so he's last for me. Cade Otton would be second last. I don't like the way that the trends have been going. His targets, his receptions have all been down since Mike Evans has come back. Again, I think that he's like the 4th option in the passing game. Like, running backs, McMillan, Evans, like, those are the guys that they're scheming up plays, and Otton is kind of like the last man standing. In Dallas, second fewest receptions allowed to tight ends this season. So their defense has been pretty good at containing tight ends. And Kincaid, I was really inspired by his performance last week. Again, he led the team in receiving air yards. He caught a touchdown, but it got called back because of a holding call. So I think that he's going to catch a touchdown. Again, the Bills can do whatever they want against the Patriots. And last week, Trey McBride, again, he should have scored a touchdown, but he had a monster game catching passes. So the Patriots can't stop tight ends. So I like Dalton Kincaid the most.
Say goodbye to start-sit dilemmas with Fantasy Pros start-sit assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each and every week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the start-sit assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and make winning decisions in no time. Guys, we'll wrap up with the touchdown calls contest. This week, Erickson is on running backs.
Travis Etienne. Take Bigsby fumbled again. So I think we're going to see more of Travis Etienne as the starting running back against the Raiders. We know it's an easy matchup for him, and the Jaguars are live to win this game. So I think Etienne, I don't think he's scored since week 2. It's been a long time. So I think he breaks the touchdown drought, gets in the end zone against the Raiders.
Fitz, you are on wide receiver.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson. After 2 big games for Devontae Adams, we're getting a squeaky wheel game from Garrett Wilson. And you know how he was caught on the sidelines last week complaining about Aaron Rodgers not throwing the fade to him. Not only am I predicting a touchdown for Garrett Wilson, I'm predicting he scores on an end zone fade, a low EV end zone fade touchdown for Garrett Wilson.
Nice. So Erickson has Travis Etienne, Fitz is Garrett Wilson. I'm going to go with Trey McBride, who Erickson, I believe, had last week. And he talked me into, not actually, but he almost talked me into betting a 3-touchdown game from Trey McBride. He's been talking about it for weeks.
I've already done it for this week. We're locked and loaded.
Yeah, you've talked a big game about it. So going up against the Panthers, I will ride that with you.
Okay, Linus, say hi to the Great Pumpkin for me.
This is going to be a repeat of Erickson. Was it week 1 where you predicted Cortland Sutton to score 3 touchdowns like 2 years ago?
I was only like 3 years too early on the call.
Yeah. All right, so we got Travis Etienne, Garrett Wilson, and Trey McBride. That is our touchdown calls contest for you this week. We will wrap up there. Best of luck to everybody here in week 16. Enjoy the holidays, everyone, and enjoy the football. Hope you advance to the fantasy title games. For Fitz and Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.